Watching what?
Layman's terms.
Amos' turn.
Layman's terms.
Oh, layman's turn.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Watching
Make sure you be watching it. All right.
That's funny. Love it.
Hey guys, welcome to Layman's Terms Podcast, the place where we talk about really big topics using the smallest words possible. I'm Danny the bartender.
And I'm Tommy the trash man.
And together we're just two guys trying to explain the ever-changing world around us the only way that we know how. So the war on the unvaxxed is upon us. The world is in a divisive state right now. We have the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. We've got the Delta variant on the rise, and they say it's trickling right through the unvaxxed. Tommy, are you getting the vaccine?
That'll be a hard no for me.
Yeah. What'd you just get? You just got something else. You were like, something took Tommy's attention.
Yeah, no. So when it comes to the vaccine, we've talked about this multiple times. I mean, I have, my opinion hasn't changed, and it kind of sucks because, our last episode, we talked about this kind of stuff, and it almost feels like we're beating a dead horse. But with that being said, it's kind of like every time you turn on the news, every other day, there's new restrictions looming over your head. There's potential lockdowns coming down the road again. And it's just like, it's just inescapable. And it's like, like for me, for instance, I've mentioned before, bartending in a retirement home, they're obviously more susceptible. And it was something that was talked about that it was going to be mandatory to get the vaccine. And, one of my supervisors called me the other day and they said that I have to call HR so we can discuss moving forward pertaining to the vaccine. Now, prior to that, I just got tested last Thursday because they said that if you're not vaccinated, you're going to have to get tested monthly. I don't even care if I got tested weekly. I mean, at this point, they don't even go up as high as they did before. And it's a rapid test. So, I mean, the results come back in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I'd be down for a weekly fucking test.
Even if you had to come in 20 minutes earlier to your shift and you had to get tested, like, okay, no problem.
Yeah, and for you, see, what I started to think about today with you is like, it's one thing, it's your second job. I am a little worried for you because you have, what is it? Is it a state job? Is it a government job for the trash man?
Technically, I guess it's a federal job. I mean, it's a local municipality, so I don't know exactly, I don't really know all the details. Now, we are union, so I don't really know how that would really affect us. It was never required, the first time. We had two people that came down with it. One guy I mentioned who's a little bit older. He was sick. He got it right from the jump pretty early on, but he's fine now. And he actually said when he took the vax, he's like, shit, I felt almost as bad for a few days as when I had it. And he's like, and now all the information that's coming out, like, what's the point of even getting it? He's like, I wouldn't even have fucking taken it. Now, like months later, like hearing all the different shit. But
going with you, when you say like, it's like beating a dead horse. And well, here's the thing. I feel like the last time we talked about it, we were saying like, it was more us like feeling the vibe of where things are going. I think things have amped up into where there really is, there's kind of hate spewing out on both sides or whatever at this point. And also though, like Biden just made it mandatory for all federal and state federal employees to get the vax. And, but either way, just like I'm starting to see some real nasty, unvax hate spewing on Twitter and Facebook and stuff where they're really coming down on you to get the vaccine. So it's I feel like where we were at before was like, you didn't even know what you were like. I didn't even know about the Delta variant. Like now that's all you see online is the Delta variant, the unvaxxed. And again, a confusing message because they're saying that you're hearing reports that it's 80% of vaccinated people in England that are actually in the hospitals. You're hearing it's 99.2% of people have the Delta variant that are being hospitalized or deaths or whatever here in these states. You're hearing that the vaccinated is where the virus is really spreading through. And then you're hearing that it's spreading through the unvaccinated. So that's the other thing too, is like the message is completely confusing. And I'm not even talking about just listening to different people online. I'm talking about coming directly from Pasaki,
Yeah. I just saw a stat in Sweden who they kind of had a different approach right from the get-go. They just remained open and just were relying on herd immunity. I just saw somebody saying something about they've gone 11 straight days without a COVID death. And their population is roughly around 10.8 million or so. And they only have 36% of their population that are vaccinated.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I'm confused about is they're saying, and I just saw this today multiple times though, from like White House sources, what they're saying now is that because of the failure of us to take the vaccine, so I don't know what rate what we're supposed to have the vaccine at, but I remember the original argument about herd immunity was that you didn't even have to get the vaccine because eventually we'd have herd immunity. Now they're saying our failure to take the vaccine has eliminated the possibility of herd immunity, which is what the government said that they were going for. So now that we failed to, take the vaccine in time, the option of herd immunity is now gone, which doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah. So listen, I don't know. No matter where you turn, you get opposing views. And that's one thing, like, I am so tired. If I hear one more idiot that says educate yourself, like, I feel like they just need to be punched in the face. And I'm sorry for being so blunt, but what fountain of information are you fucking drinking from? Like, where are you getting your sources from? You know what I'm saying? Because, back when we talked about hydroxychloroquine, there are people and doctors out there that are opposing not only the vaccine, but recommending other treatments for it. So I don't know even, okay, so your doctor that you go to maybe recommends that you get it. All right. I just was at a friend's house today who he's been nervous because he's been sick the past couple of days. Now he already had it. He's fine. He hasn't taken the vaccine. As a matter of fact, his whole family had it. He's got 2 younger boys, teenage boys, his wife, everybody had it. They're all fine. And his doctor, because he went to the doctor and he's like, well, I don't know, like what's going on? And he's like, dude, you got a sinus infection. And he's giving him some antibiotics or whatnot. And he was like, oh, well, are you sure? Like, should I get tested? And he's like, dude, stop listening to the news. Which that's his doctor saying it. His doctor isn't saying, well, you know what? Go get the jab. So I'm just wondering, I'm really starting to wonder if we just stop talking about this, how bad would it be? How bad would it? I'm not saying obviously people are going to die, but we know as of last year they were saying, or well, since the beginning of all this, 350 kids under the age of 18 died, which roughly, I don't know what percentage of the population, we have that's under the age of 18. Well, we're talking, it's got to be 70, 80 million, I don't know, maybe more. And 350 people? And they're like, that's nothing. More people in that demographic die from car crashes, they die from pneumonia, and they die from the flu at higher rates. So why are we vaccinating them? Why are we talking about closing schools again? I mean, I just don't understand it. Like, I don't understand the logic, you know, and it's not even, you know, they were saying how it's not even, there's studies that are not even showing that it's kids are passing it, like transmitting it to other people, which kind of doesn't really make sense, but they're not seeing a lot of cases. But I don't even know. I don't even know what to believe anymore. But I'm just to the point where I am so sick of having to explain to people that, like, listen, man, like I respect anybody's opinion. I've said it 100 fucking times on this podcast. I respect anybody's opinion that wants to take the shot. I mean, if you feel like you're in the demographic that is, you know, that you think's more susceptible, you have underlying conditions, whatever, great. Do it. Do what's best for you. Like, I'm not gonna knock you. I'm not gonna call you an idiot for doing it. It is what it is. I'm sure most people that I know that have gotten it, they're intelligent people. They can research on their own. They can make their own decisions. But again, I don't understand why they don't think that I can't, or people like me can't make those same informed situations. I mean, there was just another
like as if you're walking around. Like, my favorite is like, you're selfish or something. Like, selfish for what? What am I selfish for? In other words, like, I'm walking around like as if I don't want to spend 5 minutes to get a vaccine. Like, what am I being? I'm not being selfish. You know, it's
no, and another, like, one of the recent viral posts that I saw on Instagram was like a collage of media posts, I mean, like media article headlines. There's, you know, 15 to 20 different headlines, you know, from like, I don't know, USA Today, Vox, CNN, different various publications that posted about the George Floyd protests and the January 6th riots. And those same posts were saying that don't let people fool you into believing that the George Floyd protests are going to spread COVID. January 6th, super spreader event.
Yeah.
I didn't know that COVID was a social justice warrior. Like, I didn't know that it was just going to creep out of the, you know, of the back alleys. Like, there goes those Trump supporters.
Well, that's how that thing was going on the whole time. It was like they were in the news was constantly defending the protests for Black Lives Matter and saying in some way that they weren't going to be super spreader events, but yet anytime there was any type of like Trump or, you know, like a mask protest or something, it was like, oh, this is going to be a super spreader event. Then they watched it for however long. But another thing too, when you're saying all them headlines, there's another weird thing of like somebody has like a collage of like blue check Twitter people posting out the same thing. Like, oh, it literally is like the same thing word for word, except for they add one or two things. Like, I just came out of the emergency room and my friend seen that the Delta variant is really key, and it's like the same exact post, like as if somebody was like, here, post this shit out. So, yeah. But even going back to what you were saying, like when you were like, if we stop talking about it, if we all just stop talking about it, whatever, dude, I'm 100% convinced that, if you look at like when you were saying like 230 kids died or whatever, that if you take away the COVID, factor of the whole thing, that basically if you look around you, people are dying in the same fashion that they died before. Every once in a while, a random kid who had an underlying illness succumbs to a simple thing, and maybe he didn't know he had the underlying thing. An old person succumbs to something, kind of, they're 86 years old and they die from pneumonia or whatever. And then you got to factor in that those COVID tests apparently were like 40 to 60% faulty, but without even, without even getting into all that, it's just like, it's just crazy to think that the only reason why people get scared again, and that's the thing, like I was talking to you about like 2 weeks ago, where it's like, you can see that like the media narrative turns into like time to fear this. And instantaneously everyone goes from like, who cares, to just fucking filled with fear. It's kind of crazy.
Well, yeah, and I think ultimately, I think there's a couple things at play. One, the majority of people, especially in Western civilization, are terrified of death, especially if you don't believe in an afterlife. You know what I mean? Like if you don't believe in God, then I would imagine that yeah, death has got to be a little bit. It's got to be terrifying, right? And I saw somebody post who has been, very liberal throughout this, and you can always kind of tell people's kind of opinions and based off their posts, and they talk about acceptance and all this bullshit, but they're extremely judgmental and just say really weird random things. And she posted something, and it was a tweet by somebody saying like, while Republicans are just saying like we just have to go back to normal and live with COVID, as if like just here we go again, just normalizing death. Well, what that's what life is. Like, do you think you're going to live forever? I mean, I just like, what do you mean normalizing death? It's part of life. That's part of this journey. It's unfortunate. It sucks. It sucks that some people die. You know what I mean? Like, dude, today is my father's birthday. Like, it's been 2 years now since he died. Would have been 66. It sucks that things happen. It sucks that happened. You know what I mean? It sucks that his twin sister, my aunt, because they, obviously twin sisters, same birthday. She died several years before that. She died of cancer. It's horrible, but that's just what this is. And no matter if you're fucking posting black squares or using pronouns in your profile, death comes for us all. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the fuck you think you're a good person. It doesn't matter. You get hit by a bus, you can get fucking shot by a stray bullet, you can develop some kind of crazy, autoimmune disease, cancer. The world is full of death everywhere around us. And the easier it is, the more you're likely to accept that. I think the easier it is to just kind of like a sigh of relief and just do what you got to do every day. You know what I mean? Like take full advantage every single day, because a lot of us do get lazy. We get complacent, right? I'll do it tomorrow. I mean, how many times have we put off podcasts and I'll do it the next day? You never fucking know. But that is just part of life, man. And I really like, I don't remember if I said it on the last podcast. I think I did. But I just said to my mom, I'm like, she got all upset. But I'm like, look, I don't want to live like this. Like, if we're going to start locking down and all this shit and all this like anti, people, unvaccinated people hate and all this divisiveness, like even not even just COVID, the black and white narrative, the gay versus straight, the white, like just everything that they're doing to divide us. Like that's not how we're meant to live. And like, I would rather like just take my chances and potentially die from something like this than to live in constant fear. That's just where I'm at right now. Like and I know maybe that sounds crazy to some people, especially, like for me also, somebody may be hearing this or maybe hearing me say that, maybe you have children, maybe you're married, you have, much more reason to want to live forever, to see them grow up, to grow old with your spouse. I don't have any of that. And now I'm not saying my life is worth less or anything like that. And I'm not saying woe is me. I'm just saying the current trajectory that I'm on in my life, living it the way it is right now, I would rather catch it, take my chances catching it and dying than getting this vaccine, not knowing what can potentially happen 10 years down the road. Because as much information as that we have now, and as comfortable as people are taking it and listening to their doctor, all throughout history, there's been treatments that turn out years later that cause health problems. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I really don't know. But I do know that there are other ways, and everything that we know about this disease, there are other ways that, and things that you can do in your daily life, whether it's, getting vitamin D, reducing inflammation in your body. There are ways naturally to lower the risk of complications from COVID. The same reason that you would take a shot. But I think, and this is a conversation I just had with somebody last night, I think the majority of people, they don't want to do that. They don't want to, put down the cheeseburger, the Krispy Kreme donuts, whatever. They don't want to change their life. They don't want to make those adjustments. They just want to take the easy pill to swallow. In this case, it's a jab. And then just continue to live an unhealthy lifestyle.
Well, the other thing too is, like, if you were saying that and you were standing on the ledge of a building, I would be pulling you back and saying you're crazy. But when you said, like, at this, like, I just want to live my life and, people die and whatever. I mean, like, if you're saying that when you're playing Russian roulette, I'm like, Tom, you're crazy.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, like, we've just went through, like, now the whole thing is that you're weighing the odds. And when we're talking about the amount of people, like, in other words, I personally don't, and it's not like I'm just making this up in my head. It's what I'm being told. And what I was told in the beginning was 15 days to stop the spread, but forget that part of it. The main thing was 15 days to wrap our head around what we're dealing with. And what freaks me out is we've seemed to wrap our head around what we're dealing with. And it seems to be a lot less than what we thought would be a pandemic. And I would also say that there are serious credentialed medical people out there who have debated whether this has even been a pandemic. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so what I think is nuts is that people would rather stay in their houses forever, and that the government or whoever thinks that locking us down constantly is the answer. And it makes me fear the fact that, like, what if this was a worse thing? Like, what if this was, 30% of the population dying? And, like, even then you'd have to wrap your head around, like, moving forward. So at what point do you understand that, like, constantly locking down is more, like, when you said I'd rather just live my life? I mean, the thing is when I'm weighing the odds of what it would mean for me to be locked down again against what it would mean for me to just, take my chances with the virus. I mean, from the information that's been gathered, that doesn't mean that, like, I might not get the virus and die. I also have noticed that if you get the vaccine, there's no real reward. I also have noticed that it seems to me that the risk of complications from the vaccine may possibly just as high as the risk of dying of COVID. So nothing, and then you have the factor of when you said, where are these people getting their information from? The people that are telling you do your research and stuff. And honestly, nobody's come to me with any other information than, like, I feel like we're the ones doing research. And it's not that we're doing research. I don't think, like, I have anything to really, I have my internal things that I've seen. And some of it just comes with even watching people's behavior. Like, I can't sit there and explain to someone how in my own life I've learned to trust people and things, and I'm not getting that same, that same kind of, thing that makes me trust people with the information I'm receiving from my government, from the White House, and from medical people. So I'm, it's just a personal thing, like we talked about before, but at the same time, I would love to ask someone who's telling me to get the vaccine. I would love to ask them, well, what's in the vaccine? How are you so sure it's fine? And I think when you were talking about the guy eating the cheeseburger and everything, it's like they've been told to take the vaccine. They took it. Now they're being told, like, they have no information as to why or whatever. And now everything that they know isn't based off of shit they read. The shit that they read is like, oh, this person said to take it. Oh, this person took it. This person said that. And now what they're listening to is, now you might have to be locked down again because these people won't take it. And 90% of they're just percentages and shit they don't listen to. They wouldn't listen to me telling them percentages of reasons why, the theory that BLM holds that there's black genocide on the streets by police officers. They don't listen to my data, when I say that. So it's like, what are they offering me besides that they've done something that they've been told to do, and now they're being kind of having the carrot taken away from their face because of me. And I think that that's the problem that we're getting into is, and then you wonder, like we've talked about before, you have these people that it's hard to even kind of debate with them or conversate with them because they have things in their minds that they can't, look internally and look modestly at the situation and admit maybe they're not 100% right about some things. And now you're dealing with people that already took the jab. So if you're going to sit there and try and explain to somebody how you're not really positive that this thing is, this thing could have problems down the line, it's like you're telling them maybe you were wrong, and they know. I feel that that's a hurdle that we haven't been able to cross with anybody in the climate that we're in socially.
Yeah. And, I've mentioned this guy before on the podcast, Jimmy Dory. He's a political commentator. He is of the left, I guess he considers himself a progressive, but he is highly critical of everyone on the left, everyone in general. But it's just nice to hear somebody who is on the left, who is willing to step up and criticize his own team. So he was on Rogan today, and he talked about he is labeled an anti-vaxxer, but he got the vaccine, and he was labeled an anti-vaxxer because he tweeted about his side effects after getting the shot. So he said that the side that he got the shot in, his neck went stiff. Now, one of his assistant and his wife, the same things. And he said, I looked it up and that's a side effect. His lasted longer. Now, this is after his second shot. His lasted longer than the rest of them. And then he was saying for several weeks, maybe even months, that he was having severe bouts of exhaustion. So his doctor was treating him after this with ivermectin and some other things. And his thing is, look, why are we not talking about the side effects? Now, I was just mentioning this the other day. I'm like, there's no mention of it at all. Like, it's, well, you're not even getting that, those cute little fucking herpes commercial side effect descriptions. You know what I mean? Like, after they're bike riding and talking about how they're living their life and is living their best life, and they're like, side effects may include, your leg falling off and heart palpitations and restless sleep and your numbs, your legs go numb, blah, 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 blah. They're not even saying that. And if you talk about it, and if you talk about anybody that had side effects, suddenly you're anti-science, you're anti-vax.
Well, and I just watched the thing today where they were like, they're trying to sell you on the vaccine. Because before we did this, I just did like unvaccinated, listen and watch some CNN clips and stuff. And one of the clips was a guy explaining to you why you should. And they're like, and it has only been emergency approved by the FDA, but that's because these things take time. And then they went on, and I'm like, they take time. Why? Why do they take time usually? Because usually they take time because usually we need more time to understand whether this thing is effective or not, and whether there's the side effects outweigh the reward of taking the vaccine.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that's my thing of like what I was saying too, where a lot like it's not even like I'm sitting here saying I've got the facts of why you shouldn't take it. What I'm saying is in my life, when people don't want to, when people are hiding, like if I looked at people and they said drink this and I said why, and they're like just drink it, and then they were like no it tastes good, and I'm like well I don't know if I want to drink it. Then you look over and somebody says oh he drank it, and I say well, what happened to you? And they're like no just drink it. Fucking tell me what happened to you. You know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the drink. I'm just not touching it at this point, you know?
Right. Right.
And like you can like I said, like I have no information as to say why somebody shouldn't drink that drink. But what I know is that my brain has already decided that this is a situation that you can't trust fully.
Yeah. You know, and here's the other thing too. You know, when I have these conversations with people and we talk about it on the podcast, I'm not somebody that's just listening to anti-vaccine people. I just listened to a podcast the other day with Sam Harris, and he had a doctor on, and they were saying it's crucial for people to get the vaccine. You know, and they were saying it's crucial. Like they were saying it's the way that we're going about this is really bad. Like they were like, you know, there is a lot of misinformation out there about the vax. And he said, but the political, I can't even speak. The politicization, why can I not? The politicalization of this vaccination, because everything's been made so political. That's the problem. And he was like, and we have politicians that are calling people stupid for not taking it. You know, so they're belittling people, and there is so much misinformation out there. That's why people are reluctant, because they don't know where to turn. They don't know, you know, what real news and real legitimate sources anymore. You know what I mean? Like, hey, if you listen to CNN on a daily basis and you think that's a legit source, reliable source, then you're probably going to take the vaccination. If you listen to Fox, there's been a lot of Republicans recently, you know, Trump has DeSantis. There's been a lot of people that have come out and say, hey, Ben Shapiro, take the vaccine. But they're also saying, listen, we don't need to criticize people that aren't going to take it. And you really shouldn't be worried about people that aren't going to be taking it, because if anything happens, they're the ones that are going to be sick. You know what I mean? And now with all the news, vaccinated people can get, you know, me sick just as easily as I could get them sick. And, you know, it's so I sent you the little tweet or whatever it was last night. And I'll look at that real quick. The little text messages. Where did it go? Sorry for the delay here, people. So this is a random person. Ken Dillianin, whatever. He works at NBC. He said new data suggests that fully vaccinated individuals are not just contracting COVID, but could be carrying higher levels of virus than previously understood, facilitating the spread. My NBC News colleagues are reporting. Then you send me a tweet from Jason D. Mize. What is it? Meister. According to USA Today, vaccinated individuals could have higher levels of virus and infect others amid surge of cases driven by the Delta variant. So then today I saw this Nobel Peace Prize, well, not Peace Prize. This Nobel winner of virology, Luc Montagnier. He's French, probably the most published virologists in the world, who discovered HIV, was ridiculed, censored, and defamed for trying to warn that breakthrough cases would open up the gates of hell, but was ignored. Mass COVID vaccination, an unacceptable mistake that is creating the variants. So let me ask you something. If you're talking about you need to educate yourself. Imagine saying that to a fucking Nobel Prize winner who has this opinion on it because you listen to fucking Don Lemon. Like, this is what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, or you listen to your local doctor. And I'm not saying that this guy is any better or worse than your local doctor, but a leading virologist who discovered HIV. Now, I was kind of mentioning this in a conversation I had with somebody last night. And it's like, well, how do I know that any of these things that I just read are legit? So I went on DuckDuckGo instead of Google, and I looked up this guy, and there are a few different articles. There's things that are saying it's misleading what he was saying. So again, it is complicated to find out what exactly truth is. But from some of the things that I read, this is layman's terms. As you can see, I was fucking just demolishing people's names. I have no idea. And other big words. Sometimes we have difficult saying those things. He was saying there was some kind of philosophy or whatever that maybe in the vaccine that you can also ingest certain, he didn't go into details about how you would ingest this in your diet, but it can be passed down through generations that could lead to health issues, as well as a brain kind of degeneration. And he's like, we may not know these things for another 5 to 10 years down the line. So this is why there is hesitancy. Like people that are just running out there and just like, yeah, man, I want to get back to normal. Sure. Like just do it. There are people like Brett Weinstein who warned us about where this potential lead from. There are other doctors out there that are like, hey, man, listen, there are certain things about this that could potentially lead down the road. We're not going to see it right away. We're not going to see it in 9 months to a year of studies that they're like, oh, this is the most successful vaccine ever created. We're just not going to see it. Like he's talking 5 to 10 years down the road. Well, and the mental degeneration that he's talking about, he's like, it's incurable. So again, you know,
well, this goes into what you were saying, where it's like or what we were both saying in the sense of, you know, if you turn off the news, you know what I mean? And you just kind of are aware of this virus. It's like the risk of the virus, not even the risk of me getting it, just the entire risk of what the virus has to offer. You know, it seems to me that it hasn't reached a point where I'm like, hey, this is worth the possibility of shit happening to me down the road, you know? But going back to where you said, like, when people say do your research or whatever, like, here's my research. I watched that Jimmy Dore episode with Rogan.
Yeah.
And basically what I've known that is concretely true to me, because there's nothing that I've read that is concretely true, but what is true to me is that this vaccine has some side effects, and for some reason you're not allowed to talk about them. And the people that I've watched, and one of them being the Brett Weinstein one with Rogan, and other people that have mentioned, even some people as crazy as Alex Jones, one thing that stands true is when they get some doctor on to talk about what some of the negative things that are happening with this vaccine is something about these spike proteins not going where they're supposed to go and going all over your body and actually causing like little clots, little teeny clots that can't even be noticed, that are only going to bother you down the line. But one of the symptoms that I've seen like several different people talk about are this overwhelming feeling of exhaustion. And what they're saying that is these little tiny clots all over your body kind of, slowing your circulation down and not providing the amount of oxygen you need, but on such a weird scale that it just kind of like affects you on this slow, slowly. But the only reason why I'm saying this is it isn't like I read that somewhere from Alex Jones and so I won't get the thing. No, I've watched people as I'm constantly searching for truth. But the one thing that I keep seeing is whether they're even talking about the problem with the vaccine or not. I've seen people that don't even explain it as into what exactly is happening to them, but they say things like, I have an overwhelming feeling of it being exhausted, or I have trouble breathing, or, I get COVID symptoms from the vaccine and they stay for longer than they should. So what I know right now is that there are side effects. In some people, they're worse than others. But then when I go to look at at what someone would call trusted sources, all I see from the trusted sources are constant attempts to cover up any possibility of side effects from the vaccine. So that doesn't fucking put confidence in me that it's something that I should take. And then I weigh it against the odds, or I weigh it against what I'm seeing in society. I'm weighing it against people that I know that have had COVID. I'm weighing it against what I'm seeing around me of people dropping dead or not. And when I weigh it all up against each other, I don't see where that outweighs the risk of these side effects down the line. And that's what's crazy is I feel like people are being told that we're like reading an article from a certain individual and therefore we're choosing not to. People that I believe to be true sources couldn't come out right now and tell me that I should take the vax and change my mind. I would still do my own research in some way.
Right. And there's been a quote that I can't remember exactly who said it. That's been kind of floating around recently. And it's a little bit of a tongue twister there, so bear with me. But it was something along the lines of, I would rather there be questions with no answers than questions that are not, or answers that cannot be questioned.
Yeah. Sounds like a great quote.
That's kind of where we are. And that is the biggest thing. Like, I don't care where you stand, because, as much as we've talked about this, I'm not coming on here telling you that I'm some leading virologist and that I have a medical degree. I'm not on here to tell you that you should or shouldn't take the shot. I'm not on here, and I'm pretty sure you're doing the same thing. What I am saying is, I don't understand why people are so easily just falling into this narrative and not questioning anything. I don't understand how people aren't seeing, not just even with this, just over the past, couple of years, these narratives that are just completely clashing with one another, that don't make sense, and people are just marching right along.
Yeah,
like
even
like nothing's wrong. I'm like, dude, none of this makes sense.
Yeah,
your favorite politicians that's posting black squares are now refunding the police.
It's all ridiculous.
And you want to know why? Because shit is getting out of fucking hand, because they allowed it to. They condoned it. You almost condemn these people.
Have you ever had a conversation with somebody where then you pin you literally see their brain going like, well, wow, that kind of causes a conundrum for me to still make this defense. However, I'm just going to make the defense anyway. You know what I mean? Right. I'm not going to take in the information that was just given to me. I'm not going to question. I'm not going to add my own reasoning behind it. I'm just going to kind of go, well, if that's what she said, that's what she said. That's where we're at now. Because it's just like Biden. Biden said 3 weeks ago, if you get your vaccination, you won't have to change it. You won't have to wear a mask. He just said at a town hall, what was it, this week? He literally just said, if you get vaccinated, you are immune to the disease. You will not get it. Then he's coming out today with all kinds of issues on how the vaccinated still have to wear masks, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sorry, bro. You're not making any fucking sense to me. Like, you're just not making sense. And I'm not saying that therefore it's bad. I'm saying therefore you're not where I'm getting my information. I'm not gonna allow you to tell me to distrust people who the reason why I trust them is because of their consistency and the amount of times that they've been right, even when I question them. You know?
Yeah, and when it comes to like narratives being pushed, we talked about just the Jimmy Dore episode, and he mentioned him and Rogan got into it a little bit about policing, and he was like saying that statistically, being an officer isn't a dangerous job. Well, so his narrative is obviously, police brutality is horrible in this country and yada yada yada. But depending on who you listen to and the numbers that you look at, you will see that police shootings, especially among African Americans, which, is the big push right now, is not as bad as the media makes it out to be. Statistically speaking, you are much less likely to be killed by a cop than being shot randomly by somebody else.
Yeah.
So there's a narrative on both sides that kind of doesn't make sense, and not necessarily. It's not saying that, when somebody says, oh, well, being a police officer is the most dangerous job. And Jimmy Dore was like, well, fishing, a fisherman is a more dangerous job. You know what I mean? Like deadliest catch. Like, well, yeah, of course, maybe, you know what I mean? Like maybe statistically there are more people that die in that, but the conditions and the situations, everything surrounding that is different. And the same could be said about the statistics when it pertains to police shootings and Black people.
Well, how about this for one? It's like, isn't it kind of scary to think that the people that they're not necessarily in control of our lives, but isn't it kind of scary to think that the people that we've elected and put in a position to make sure that they do what's in our best interest, as in finding solutions, in ways that we can prolong our well-being as a civilization or as individuals? Isn't it weird to think that when they get down to the Senate floor to debate or to come up with something, that the last thing on their mind is how do we work together and find a solution? And the only thing on their mind seems to be, how do I prove or reinforce my narrative as being the right narrative? Like, rather than getting down and saying, well, like you said, like you have one side of the argument is that the police, it's clearly that they're kind of, there's a narrative there that conflicts with the other narrative, but yet their information on both sides is not necessarily all false. So why aren't they coming to the table and trading some of that information and trading some of that knowledge, and then combining it and coming away with a solution? And instead, it just seems like they get together like they're a football team and they go like, before we go into this negotiation, let's make sure that we run this baby home and we're right when we get out of here. It's crazy.
Yeah, and listen, and I'm sure we've kind of talked about this before, but I think one of the things that is kind of getting lost on everything when it pertains to vax versus unvaxxed and, social justice warriors and all that is the psychological aspect of it. When I talk about like me and you and I, for instance, we're both kind of like, we kind of march to our own beat. You know what I mean? We kind of do our own things. I've said it before, like, yeah, I'm lucky enough to have a good group of friends in my life, but we've never been one of those people that kind of just goes along and follows the crowd. So there are people that are built like you and I that are going to question narratives and be natural skeptics of things. You know what I mean? Like when somebody tells you to do something and you're like, whoa, I don't know about that. When like a lot of people like to go along with the crowd. They want to fit in. They want to be liked. They want to feel a part of something. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of like this virtual signaling, like, and when the same thing when everybody would vote and take a selfie, like, look what I did. I voted. Like the band-aid on your arm. Look what I did. I'm doing my part.
Yeah.
There's this psychological element to all of this, and social media is tied in with it, that everybody wants to relate. Everybody wants to get that click, that like button. And it's just like I have no need for that. You know what I'm saying? Like it just doesn't appeal. Like I always thought it was weird when all these people were taking like selfies with their voting stickers. Like I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just weird to me, but I also understand, and that's what I think a lot of people are lacking, the fact that I understand that not everybody looks at it the way that I do. But it seems like a lot of the people that talk about being open-minded, they can't wrap their heads around the fact that there are people out there that kind of just want to stand on their own 2 feet, and they don't need the validation. They don't need everybody to like them. They don't need all that stuff. And there's natural skeptics that are going to challenge things, and they're going to questions, and that just aren't going to go along to fit in. You know what I mean? Like I was just having a conversation with my mom today. She's talking about getting it. She works in a school. She's saying, I just think I'm probably going to have to get it. And in a way, she's kind of she's indirectly telling me to get it. Like, cause I'm telling her about my part-time job. Like I'm going to wind up quitting. And she's like, well, it's just a shame, you make good money there, and it's really easy, and it really works well with your scheduling. And, I just, I don't know that you're going to be able to find something that fits so well with you. Yeah, I know, but what does that mean? Like, I'm not like, that's just a part of life. I'm not going to change my mind because it's convenient for me. And then she continues to tell me about a family gathering over this weekend. Now, this is ridiculous. And I think this is just my mom making shit up in her head. I could be wrong, but she was saying that there's a big gathering down the shore with a lot of family, and they're all vaccinated. My mom isn't. And there was a situation maybe recently where there was a few people together, and somebody mentioned something about the vaccination. And my mom, I guess it got brought up that my mom didn't take it. So the one woman, she said, looked at her funny. So that's one of her reasons that she doesn't want to go down the shore, because she's like, well, I don't really know that they're going to want me there. And now listen, I know my mom. My mom makes excuses. My mom will tell me 6 weeks from now she makes plans to go to a fucking restaurant with somebody. So I'll have to make sure that I'm not busy, because that's what she's doing. And then the day that it comes, she doesn't go because she's got to fucking clean the bathroom floor. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how she is. But I would imagine that a lot of people do probably feel that way. And I think it's extremely fucking weird. And for somebody like me, I'm not worried about whether I'm around vaccinated people or unvaccinated people. Like, it doesn't even cross my mind. When I walk into the store in the morning, with no mask on, I have no idea who's vaccinated, who's not, and I could give two shits.
Yeah.
It doesn't even fucking cross my mind. And if somebody was having a conversation and saying like, yeah, man, I ain't taking that, and they're fucking standing not 6 feet fucking apart from me or whatever, I'm not going to run in the other fucking direction and hold up a fucking cross to tell them to fucking stay away, demon. Like, it's just not going to happen.
Dude, I've also noticed. Well, going with exactly what you're saying. What this is the thing. These are the phases of it that see. Like I'm seeing 20 steps ahead. It's not like we're even going to get there. So I understand how somebody could be like, it's not. Don't you're overthinking it. But it's like your mom is thinking about how she's going to be part of this group, and there's a possibility. And here's the thing, like we just kind of noticed from some of the reaction from our last podcast is I can't think of a specific thing to relate it to, but can you imagine being at a party? Like say you go to a party next week and there's like some kids there and you're whatever, and you're like, yeah, no big deal. These are my friends, but remember what they believe in their head, what they believe. And maybe in some ways it's being amplified in a way that I don't agree with by the media. And someone turns around and goes like, you're not vaccinated? And you're like, nah, I didn't decide not to get it. And then all of a sudden it becomes like, dude, are you fucking serious? Like you're coming here and you know that this fucking thing's spreading and I got fucking kids over here and stuff. And so that feeling, what scares me is that feeling is what they want to start to happen. That feeling where you're like, oh shit, like now I'm not even this person, but now I am, right. Like it's not representing who I am. And so that was your mom kind of saying to you like, hey, wouldn't be that horrible to take it. And then I think what's going on is when, what I've said is you're weighing the risk. And then what's going to happen is when you're sitting there, like we're like in my mind, locking down and not having a job is worse than just living your life and taking your chance. However, what if the vaccine becomes like, just take the fucking jab, dude, and you can go to work, don't take the jab and you're going to go to parties, get treated like shit. You're going to lose one of your two jobs, if not both of them. So what I'm starting to fear is the possibility of making a decision, knowing that I'm the actual decision that I need to make is now being hindered by other factors that are artificially being injected into the decision-making process, Right. And so, it's like if you're being interrogated and you're in some fucking prison somewhere and you're being tortured, I'm sure you make a lot of decisions that were risk beneficial to you, but you wish you never made them, and they have nothing to do with the actual decision you wanted to make. And so it's just kind of getting to a scary place where, like my mom's vaccinated, and my mom's still on the side of me not being vaccinated. My mom's still on the side of like, this vaccine, I don't trust it. However, when you look at why my mom might have taken it and why I think sometimes like, man, I hope nothing's bad in the thing. I'm not worried about like they're injecting fucking robots into us. I'm worried that maybe down the line, somewhere far down the line, we're going to regret that we took this vaccine. Now, my mom's 65 years old. I'm more worried about my mom getting COVID and possibly being in an age range where something bad could happen to her because she's up in the range.
Right. Absolutely.
So I weigh the odds in my head of, why? But then you also got to think, the one thing that I can't wrap my head around is we were possibly not, every single person said we won't get a vaccine for 3 to 5 years at best, most likely 7 years. Like most vaccines take 7 years.
Right.
Also, there was never, ever any talk about children needing anything. Now we're in this world where children need to be vaccinated. Kids above 2 need to wear masks. Every single human being needs to be vaccinated or else we can't go forward with our normal lives, which kind of freaks me out because what was the plan then? What was the plan when we stayed home for 15 days to figure out how bad things were? Like this is the least of what they thought a pandemic would be. And yet we got a vaccine in a year. So if we had no vaccine and this pandemic was just as bad as it is or a little worse, would we be having to stay locked down and shit for 10 years? It doesn't, and this is again is my thing of like that right there just doesn't compute in my head. It just doesn't compute, you know? And when you were saying like people with virtue signaling and stuff like that, and then us being kind of outsiders and outcasts, what I also believe about myself is, see, I've always been this outsider, this outcast, but yet part of a group. Like I'm the outcast of the group, you know? If you look at, you look at a forest or something and you have gazelle and you have this and you have the lion and you have whatever. I'm whatever animal there isn't a ton of, but he's still part of the whatever makes up the jungle.
The ecosystem.
The ecosystem. Yeah. Like I'm part of it. Nobody wants me out of it. They just accept that I have my own pattern.
And you're like a cute koala bear.
Yeah, I'm just up there like, shoving little
leaves
things
in your mouth.
Yeah.
You know,
I always thought I was more of a beaver.
Well, they're vegetarians too, so you know what I mean. Like,
but so I guess there's so many things and decisions that I've made in my life where sometimes I made them because I just knew I couldn't live with myself. Like I feel when you're part of a group, you get accustomed to making decisions that aren't necessarily the ones that you want, but it solidifies your status in the group. So part of constantly making group decisions is that you probably don't always make the decision that you want, and you can still cheer on the group and move forward. But so therefore, maybe you're not ready to get vaccinated, but you get vaccinated, you put the Band-Aid on, and everybody goes, yay, Tommy got the vaccine. And in the back of your mind, you're like, I wasn't really ready for it, but whatever. I mean, I guess I'm part of the group. For me, something like virtue signaling, like just that little thing, like just posting the I voted thing, knowing in my head, like, I wasn't even going to vote, but I just did it so that everybody just kind of wanted to signal to the group I'm part of it. Well, I wouldn't be able, like I would internally be falling apart because I would just have went against the structure of who I am as a person. And so if I was to turn around right now, and because I've had the thought many times of like, shit, maybe I should just get the fucking vaccine. I mean, like just basically it's like another jump off a ledge. Like I still don't believe it, but maybe I'll just get the vaccine so that my life is just easier. Whether something happens to me or not, whether we're right or wrong about this thing, like I still feel like if I made that decision when I wasn't ready to make it and when I didn't want to make it, and if I knew that I made that decision for someone or something or some other group and not for myself, the structure of who I am, I would always question it internally. I would always feel like if somebody was like, yeah, man, it's about time you got the vaccine, I might go, but I'd feel real fucked up inside. Like, that's not why I took it. You know what I mean? Or whatever.
Yeah. You know what it just reminded me of? You and I are Colodro in the backseat of the car when his boys are about to go firebomb the black kids in a Bronx Tale. And in the back of his head, he's like, oh man, I don't want to be here. This is wrong. I just, but he's there because they're his friends. And even though Sonny, who's looking out for him, is always telling him, like, don't fucking listen to them, see, you don't fucking stay away from them fucking kids, see, they're not but trouble. But they're my friends. They're my friends, Sonny. I gotta go along with them. When they get into fights with the black kids, like he's the one that's like, this doesn't feel right. You know what I mean? And he tries to help the dude. Like, I feel like that's
a perfect analogy. Yeah.
That's a lot of people right now that feel that pressure. You know what I mean?
Well,
it's like not everybody's going to knock on the door and say, see, get the fuck out of this car right now. and then they fucking all die in a fucking blaze of fire, and you go back and you're like, holy shit, that could have been me. That could have been me. And there's so many people that go through life like that in general. Like, you know what I mean? That just kind of go with the crowd and do whatever just to feel socially accepted. And it's not always the best case. And I'm, maybe some people may look at that as a bad example because we're talking about a deadly virus, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just saying there are people that like us, and there's millions of people like us that have, just because everybody around you's telling you one thing, there's a natural gut instinct telling you, like, I don't know, man, this just seems off to me. And I can't just do it because you're telling me, like, oh, dude, this is the right thing to do. And you're taking fucking selfies with your fucking arm in the air. Like,
no, well, that's why you're downplaying a good analogy in the sense of forget the action that he's taken, but basically it's like he knows, like this, and this is kind of what I mean too. Maybe I'm wrong, but the whole thing is I know that I haven't come to the conclusion that I need to come to. And so if I'm the dude in the backseat of that car, I mean, yeah, it's a bad example in the sense of like he's about to commit a heinous act. And we're talking about the possibility of doing something that needs to be done for your health or doesn't. Nobody's proven that yet. And so that voice of the uncle going like, don't listen to them guys, whatever, like that voice is my voice or your voice or the way that I come to my normal conclusions. And here I am in a group with a bunch of liberals, feeling good now because I'm about to just take the vaccine so my life can be better. And there doesn't have to be any type of like, big catastrophic climactic situation that happens. It's more like I'm still gonna know that I made a decision and I wasn't ready to make it and I didn't want to make it. And I made it for other people or because I was pushed in that corner.
And here's another analogy that I thought of the other day, which maybe is a bad one. Maybe it's just me. But like I've talked about it before. I have a fear of flying, right? It's one of the biggest fears, which is completely selfish, which now I realize, but like one of my biggest fears, especially, is getting on a plane alone because I don't want to die alone. You know what I mean? Like
that's when you grab the person next to you. Tell me your name.
Well,
where are you from?
Like I want to fucking be with one of my friends, but then that means that my friend's going to die with me.
Yeah.
So there's like this, you're kind of like, there's like I don't know. I can't think of the word that I'm trying to use here, but anyway, like, and I think of this guy that I always joke about, like, because we're trashmen, when we're walking the streets and through an ice storm. I worked with this guy on the back of the truck for years. He's gone down and out. Alleys are always super slippery. So like we're going, every time he goes to slip, he grabs onto me to fucking pull me down. Like
yeah.
The same time he goes to fucking pull me down. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, dude,
and I feel like, and I could be off base with this, but I feel like there's like a natural instinct for us that we don't want to be the only ones that want to go down with the Titanic, right? So like, I think it's very comforting for other people to know that if something is wrong with the vaccine, well, at least I know I'm not alone.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, that I believe that, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying, where like it's really hard to convince somebody that something's could be wrong with something they already did. But I'll change one of your analogies to make it work perfectly. We're all afraid to die, right? We said that on this thing. We're all afraid of dying. Every human being, in some way, shape, or form. Maybe more so if they don't believe in God, but I still think even God-fearing individuals are afraid to die. They've just maybe found some kind of peace with it. So you have two people that are afraid to fly because they're both afraid to die. and one guy says, I just got a ticket. I'm going to fly. And then he's spending the rest of the time telling you, come on, dude, you got to come. Just come with me. I'm doing it. I'm afraid to fly. And like just because he made his decision that he decided today I'm ready to fly, you know, he has to give you your time to figure it out. It may not be on the flight that he wants you to get on. You know what I mean? But you're still going to have to come to grips with your fear. And I guess where I'm kind of twisting it a little bit is I feel like what's going on in the world is that guy who's afraid to fly, who booked a flight and said, I'm going to fly, is now calling you a pussy because you won't get a ticket, you know?
Right.
And it's like, nah, it's not how this works. You know what I mean? And like I said before, like whether it's going to work or not, whether you want to agree with this or not, beg me, rub my back, tell me it's going to be all right. You don't go like, just fucking book the flight. Where are we going? Don't worry about it. How many people are on the plane? None of your business. Just book the flight, you know? Like, tell me what's going on. Tell me who I can, you know, sit me down with your doctor friend who can decipher this shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's what's kind of scaring me too is we're and it's also to me it doesn't, I wouldn't believe it to be for any intelligent human being to think this would be the way to go about it. Kind of what I was saying in the last thing when we started arguing, but it's like my thing is like I don't care who's right and who's wrong, but when you are trying to get your friend to go on the airplane who doesn't want to fly and people are like, hey, what's going on? We still going? Everybody go on board? And you're like, everybody's going, but Tommy doesn't know that we booked him a ticket already, but we got to try to get Tommy to get on the flight. Everyone doesn't show up at his house and go like, you're fucking this trip up for everybody. They go over and they go, Tom, please, come on. We'll have a good time. Come on, dude. And so the way that they're treating us and what they're saying and what these, you know, big political figures are kind of making us the smellies, it's like, you know, any human being knows that this is not how you do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so then I wonder, is it the division that they want? But, you know, and then the last thing I'll add to it is I just seen a really cool like tweet or something today where they showed Biden kind of saying like if you don't get the like at this point, any unvaccinated person is stupid. Like he said they were stupid. He said something else and they're just dumb. And then somebody posted underneath, wow, I wonder if it was publicly known that the majority of the people that have vaccine hesitancy are Black and Hispanic, if he would say that. And that's another thing that's kind of freaking me out. It's like people just believe that it's Trump supporters that won't get the vaccine. And that's not the case. And not only is it not the case, it's very not. Like there's a large portion of people collectively that probably almost evenly make up who's not getting the vaccine. And it's Blacks, Hispanics, and yeah, of course, probably Trump supporters. But it's like, you know, it's just weird to me. Like even at work, like I kind of feel like I'm the only guy at work that doesn't have the vaccine. And then, you know, without outing people, I just noticed some little fuss going on. And I went over and found out 2 other people aren't vaccinated. However, what's funny is the focus is always on me. And therefore, like, I don't know if these people are going to feel that kind of pressure, but the focus is on me because it's assumed that I'm the one that won't. And there's, you know, people just assume that they are on board because they must be Democrats or they must be whatever. But there's vaccine hesitancy that's not from Trump supporters. And I wonder if this kind of like way they're delivering this message is going to have an adverse effect, because if we keep pushing us in this corner and it turns out that there's a good portion of, you know, your base that is vaccine hesitant and you're calling everybody an idiot and a moron and whatever else, and yet they still ain't buying it, well, you're kind of yelling at your own people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did say you ain't black if you don't vote for me. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean,
Come on, man.
come on, man.
What a hate.
But you know, to kind of transition because we were trying to wrap this up quickly. And you know, I feel like we from the last podcast to this one, we talked a lot about, you know, this stuff. But it still kind of is somewhat on topic when you talk about the danger of crowds and groupthink. And so I watched an interesting documentary the other night about Woodstock 99. And for obviously, I don't know. I mean, maybe some people do know, some people don't know. There's been 3 Woodstocks now to this point. You know, the first one was in, what was it, 69? I think
I
somewhere in
don't
this.
know. It's in the 60s.
Yeah, it's in the 60s. I kind of forget exactly the exact date, but uh and that was, you know, billed as you know, love, peace, happiness. And you know, it was during the time hippies were, you know, all the rage, anti-war, all that stuff. And you know, Jimi Hendrix played you know, played the Star Spangled Banner on his electric guitar, lit it on fire. I mean, a lot of iconic moments. And then it came back in 94. And you know, it was a little more, it was more rainy, it was definitely a little bit lighter uh than the next one, which brought us to Woodstock 99, which again, this was what the documentary is based upon. And there was a lot of shit that went down at Woodstock 99. um you know, between even based on the acts that were booked, you know, even compared to the other ones, there seemed to be a theme of like anger based off of those acts that were there. Um, and at the time, you know, in the late '90s, you know, it was the rise of new metal, which was all the rage. And there was a lot of angst. There was a lot of anger in a lot of those bands, you know, that kind of came out in like the mid '90s and really kind of plateaued 90 late '90s, early 2000s. And watching it now, you go back and I mean, I was getting goosebumps because I remember watching bits and pieces of it. I know people who went to it. Um, I loved still to this day some of those bands that played, and just seeing that crowd and seeing, you know, the bands talk about that day and how just it was absolutely insanity. Uh, you know, it was kind of chilling. It was pretty cool to watch. But the thing that was interesting was there was a lot that was going on in the '90s, like we talked about um, in that documentary, Girls Gone Wild. So people that maybe didn't grow up in the '90s, maybe you don't remember Girls Gone Wild. Those were videos that were everywhere, and it was just some slime ball dude. I don't even remember the guy's name, but he was just filming regular girls, showing their tits constantly, and putting a camera in front of their face and just selling videos like crazy, selling millions of dollars. So that was a trending theme that continued like throughout kind of like the '90s. And you kind of saw it in a lot of the footage that they saw. Like, and at the time, I guess it was just kind of like socially acceptable. You know what I mean? So you didn't really think about it much. But now in hindsight, watching it and seeing like all the signs and all the chants of show your tits, it's like, wow, like there's a different perspective because now I have friends that have daughters, and you hear kind of like some of the stories about the women that were being groped and, you know, some rapes that occurred. And obviously it's an overwhelmingly male, you know, atmosphere. One of the singers called it out, you know, on stage, and he was like, you know, I see a lot of women out there, they're crowd surfing. I see a lot of dudes grabbing them. And like, listen, man, like that shit is not cool. So like let's respect our women. which was dope. I mean, I think that's great that he stood up like that, especially at that time, you know. But there was just a lot of shit that went down at that, you know, riots, fires, breaking down things. And I just was thinking about like the mentality and the reasons why, and, you know, how the conditions, it was, you know, 100 degrees out there. Porta potties were overflowing. Like people were literally like diving and walking in shit. Like people were covered in mud and it was mixed with human feces. You know what I mean? They were selling bottles of water for $5 a pop. You could get a beer for the same price. So people were like, well, fuck it. I might as well just buy a beer. You know what I mean? And it culminated in, you know, they completely destroyed by the last day on the last Sunday. It was like completely destroyed. And I just thought it was really interesting, the dynamics, how they shifted, you know, from the 60s to 94 to 99. And I don't know, man.
I mean, I watched it and it was definitely fucking intriguing. I agree with everything you said. And also look, like you're looking back and you're not realizing, I don't remember being like, oh my God, this was insane. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now you're looking at it and you're like, holy shit, that's insane. And even looking back at the Girls Gone Wild craze, like it was a bit weird. But then typical me, I'm like thinking in my head, like, well, if it's so bad and it was so bad, I mean, why is OnlyFans so fucking popular right now? I know like 10 people that got one, you know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I'm not saying that it makes anything justifiable. Personally, I thought that part was the worst part about the whole thing. It seemed like there was a lot of fucking nasty shit going on there that, you know, I would say that there were probably people that were okay with some of the shit that was going on there, but I would say that the victims were the people that really just wanted to fucking like crowd surf, you know, and next thing you know, all that's happening to you. But the one thing I also thought though is like, oh, it's so horrible. But yet sometimes I feel like the media gets, you know, like whoever made that documentary or whatever, like, I mean, technically you just showed me like 100 tits of these people that you feel like they're being violated, and you're showing me videos of people being violated, you know?
Right.
And I don't know if you caught at the end, but if you at the very end, when they were showing like some girl showing her tits and a couple of guys leaning into her, if you fucking looked in, they all had their hard dicks out. It was pretty, I thought it was a lot to show on TV.
No, I didn't see it. I didn't notice that.
But anyway, another thing that I started thinking is like, it's kind of like that whole concert is a culmination of what's going on right now. It's like, yeah, you know, it's a little hot. It's a little fucking shitty and there's not really a lot of water, but like, you know, you're in this environment where, you know, slowly some things have kind of this like civil unrest has happened. And it's like, you know, we're in like day 2 of Woodstock. Like, are we going to get to day 3, you know, where we're just sliding around in our own shit? But I think it's like a good kind of like you could sit back and write some type of thesis on it, how like you know, it really became like Children of the Corn, you know, like just people out there. And I like, I guess the reason where I'm relating it is like, how long can you go without having your demands, you know, how long can you go where you're like, the toilets are fucked up, there's no water, it's fucking hot. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then they're just trying to still go on with the show. And then they were saying, I don't know if you picked up on this part, but they kind of said like MTV kind of had like given up on like there was some type of thing where MTV kind of was already trying to separate themselves from it because they realized it wasn't really a venue for them anyway. So then MTV for the next like day and a half, the last 2 days, they were kind of highlighting all the bad shit that was going on. And it's kind of like the media, like pumping that shit, like, you know, out there. But another interesting thing was how they said nobody had cell phones. They were just losing each other.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too, because, the message of the artists, there was a lot more anger, and that influenced the crowds. One of the biggest names that was kind of tossed around for inciting part of the riots was Limp Bizkit. They, at that time, they were at the height of their career, and it was day two. It was about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, something like that, and they came out, and they Fred Durst, the lead singer's like, all the anger you got out, like you got inside, everything, whether it's your job, your girlfriend, whatever, all the anger you got inside of you, get it out. And then, of course, they play their song Break Stuff. And, you literally see people tearing down gigantic pieces of plywood and crowd surfing on it. And people were like, dude, you gotta like calm it down. And they just went fucking hardcore. And then from there was Rage Against the Machine, and then Metallica. So it just continued and continued to just one aggressive act after another. And it's interesting to see how under those conditions, the performers and the message that they're putting out there and how the crowd can react.
Yeah.
Now we're living in a climate where the conditions that are going on in America and their performers are the politicians. They're performing. It's fucking political theater, and it's, the crowd is reacting to it. And it's definitely an interesting dynamic when you look at it and you can kind of compare the two. And the shifting in, like I said, from the 60s to 1994 to 1999, the shifting in the climate, in where the country was moving and how it culminated to that. Now you're seeing that same thing in the political realm, where it's anti-American, rhetoric. It's, anti-white and all this, like, just anti-white male and being straight, and that just Republicans and Democrats constantly bashing at one another. And it's showing in every aspect of our lives in the people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and even though this wouldn't go along with anything, but it's something that I think is missing from, like, in other words, maybe in Limp Bizkit's case, it would have helped. But when you're saying like they're delivering a message, well, I also think like they're delivering a message, but it was a message that they were always delivering. And it just so happened to be like, why would you put these motherfuckers back to back in this environment? However, like what, even though I think that this is a negative thing that happened at this event, it's what I'm seeing now that I don't like, that I wish people were more like Fred Durst, even though the result was bad. But I guess they kind of, from what I saw in the documentary, it seems like people were mad because they went over to Fred Durst and was like, hey, you need to calm these people down. And Fred Durst kind of was like, not my fucking job. You know what I mean? Like, not
you brought me here to do what I do.
Yeah. Like, in other words, I guess the negative side is that Fred Durst, the positive side is that you see that there was an artist who was like, I'm not fucking listening to what somebody interfering what I do. However, nowadays it seems like everybody's more than willing to fucking interject and do what they're told to appease the fucking whatever you want to call it, whether it be the man or whatever. But I will say this: there was too much whiteness at that fucking Woodstock. Was that a sign of the times or what? Because I don't remember even my world being that white. That was a white world.
Well, I mean,
do you think that was highlighted that way, or was it like 90% white people that were there?
I mean, listen, based off of the acts that you booked,
Yeah.
that was probably what you were going to attract. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's not like it was like they did have DMX there. They had the Roots. The Roots were there. Wyclef was there. But even at that time, for instance, I mean, there was a lot of like the Family Values tour. That was a lot of rock and rap tours that were kind of going on that you would see, like Rage Against the Machine and Wu-Tang Clan. But generally, even with hip hop acts, like shows like that were usually predominantly white. You would have more, now the Wu-Tang Clan's there, you would have more black people, and it was more mixed than you would if it was just a Rage Against the Machine concert.
Yeah.
But based off of what the majority of the acts that were booked, it's to be expected. You know what I'm saying?
Well, if we want to leave it there, I'm going to leave you with something to look up on your own, because when you were talking about when you said I don't really even know what happened to that guy, what his name was, but the guy from to Show Us Your Tits, Girls Gone Wild.
Yeah.
You remember how his story ends, right?
I know he lost like a lot of his money, like he got sued, lawsuits.
So do you remember maybe like, I want to say 15 years ago or something, when Paris Hilton and Paris Hilton was the shit, and Kim Kardashian was like kind of new to the scene, and there was that kind of world where the paparazzi was following around like Lindsay Lohan and whatever else. So there was a security guard / bouncer / stalker, a guy with like MMA skills who somehow infiltrated that Lindsay Lohan, Paris Hilton world, but befriended all these people, but was actually like a nefarious guy. And he went around. Don't you remember there was like a series of robberies where it was like Paris Hilton's home was robbed and everybody's house was robbed? Well, one that wasn't talked about a lot, but you can look it up, it's 100% true, was there was a lot of hush hush about like what actually, who got robbed, what was taken, blah, blah, blah. So they the guy basically befriended that guy. And then he broke in his house, tied him up, videotaped him sodomizing the dude, and tried to hold him for ransom. And I think the dude like paid him ransom or whatever, but either way, that guy went to jail that was doing all that. But basically, like at the end of the line for that guy, he basically was sodomized on videotape and had it held for ransom. So it's interesting. Thought you might like that.
Yeah, like I don't remember.
It wasn't a big thing, but there's a documentary on it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember he was kind of like, he was a big kind of like celebrity in a way. You know what I mean?
And he moved.
Like you would see him partying with rock stars, and you would see him, Snoop Dogg, and they did like Girls Gone Wild with Snoop.
Yeah, so all during that phase where the Girls Gone Wild stuff was going out, and he was like rebranding it as like party stuff and whatever. And he was hanging out with Paris Hilton and all them, and somehow whether I think the guy infiltrated him first, but basically some guy became a guy that they all knew as a guy who was also like a quasi bodyguard / security guy. So they were even more friendly with him. And he befriended all these people, and then he like robbed them all and tried to hold things like sex tapes. Like he got every one of them with something. But that dude, he fucking sodomized them and videotaped it and said, if you don't give me X, Y, and Z, I'm going to, put this out there. And somehow that guy was able to stop the tape from getting out, never pay a ransom, and also have the guy arrested.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I figured we'll go out on that note, All right, guys. Well, Tommy, good talking to you. Guys, remember, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Don't get the vax, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. Just don't take your shit out on me because you made your decisions.
Yes, I 100% agree with that statement.
All right. I'll see you guys. Peace.
Peace out.